Hi, it's Lindsay. Welcome back to the Wandering Reader. Today I'm going to be doing my July wrap up, and in the month of July I read a total of 12 books and 4,418 pages, which I'm super proud of. It's mostly down to the fact that I participated in the Booktubeathon and I read a lot in the Booktubeathon. I've put up my vlog and reading wrap up a couple of days ago, so if you haven't checked that out, I'll link that for you. Because I'll mention those books, but I'm not going to be talking about them a lot because, like I said, I wrapped them up in that video. But I had a great reading month. I thought to myself I really should participate in more readathons, and I am going to be participating in Tome Topple in August. So I'm looking forward to that. Again, I've put my TBR up for that readathon if you want to go and check that out. Again, I'll link it for you. So I'm going to get started with the books that I read in July and what I thought of them. I zoomed you in a little bit because I didn't think I was close enough, so yeah. So the first book that I finished in July was And the Mountains Echoed by Khaled Hosseini. This was a carryover from my book swapathon TBR. I didn't quite manage to finish it in that week, so I finished it at the beginning of July and I really enjoyed it. I've read all of Khaled Hosseini's books now and I have enjoyed every single one of them. This is about a brother and a sister who are separated very early on in their lives, and the book kind of goes through their story, but it also talks about lots of other people that are involved in some way in their story. So each of them have got like not a chapter but like a part of the book, and their stories are kind of weaved together in this really sort of clever way. Yeah, and it was just fantastic, so well written, so thought-provoking, really emotional, and I gave it 5 stars, and I would recommend all of his books. If you haven't picked up any of them, or you know, one in particular, I would definitely recommend them. I've really enjoyed all 3 of them. The next book that I read in July was When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon. I filmed a review of this. I'm not sure if it's already up on my channel. If it is, I'll link it, but if it isn't, it'll be up really soon. I really enjoyed this book. It's been getting a lot of hype on BookTube, so I saw a copy of it in Waterstones. I think I hauled it last month, and I had to pick it up just to see what all the fuss was about. This is a YA contemporary story about 2 American Indian teenagers who a marriage has been arranged between them by their parents. Dimple is very against the idea of an arranged marriage and against doing things in a very traditional way, whereas Rishi really kind of gets on board with that sort of idea, and they are sent to, or they go to this event. Can't remember what it's called now. What's it called? Insomnia Con, is that what it's called? Yeah, where they have to go and make an app, and they meet, and they're sort of thrown together for this 6 weeks where they're at this Insomnia Con, and I suppose you can kind of guess what happens. I thought this was really cute, a little bit predictable at times, but yeah, really cute, sort of a light contemporary story to pick up. I learned a lot about American Indian culture, which was great. Yeah, and I thought it was really cute, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Next up, I read Happily Ever After. This is a bind-up of short stories that are a companion to the Selection series by Kira Cass. This is the next one that I wanted to read of hers before I pick up any. There's 2 more in this series, and there's 1 other that she's written that's not part of the series. So there are a number of short stories in here following. So you've got one following the Queen, one called The Prince, The Guard, The Favourite, Scenes from Celeste, The Maid, After the One, and Where Are They Now? Yeah, it was really nice kind of jumping back into this world again. I said this before, this is just a light, fluffy, contemporary series. There's nothing serious or sort of deep about it, but I like these stories. I like learning a little bit more backgrounds, information about characters that we're not reading from the point of view of necessarily. Yeah, and I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. Next up, I continued my reread of Harry Potter by listening to Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, which is narrated by Stephen Fry. And I'm not going to say too much about this because it's bangs back in the middle of a series and everybody knows what Harry Potter is. But like I said before, I'm really enjoying rereading this series and listening to them on Audible. I tend to do it in my car on the way to and from work, and I was, listening to it at other moments as well. And I really enjoyed it. This is one of, I didn't like Prisoner of Azkaban so much, but this one is one of my favourites, so I ended up giving that 5 stars. Next up, we've got Her Fearful Symmetry by Audrey Niffenegger. I picked this one up. I did a try a chapter tag video a couple of weeks ago on my channel. I'll link that for you, where I sort of took some of the oldest books that I'd had on my shelf, so ones that I'd had on my shelf for a long time and hadn't got around to. So I looked at, I think there was 5 on there, and this one appealed to me the most out of the 5, so I ended up reading this one. The basic premise of this book is that you've got these twin sisters called Edie and Elspeth, and at the beginning of the book Elspeth dies, and she leaves in her will her flat and her sort of estate to her 2 twin nieces who she's never met before, and they live in America and Elspeth lives in London. And she also puts in her will that she doesn't want her sister to come over and come into the flat or, you know, anything like that. So they're kind of, at the beginning you're kind of a bit sort of, oh, what, you know, why does she not want her twin sister to come over? Why have they been estranged for so long? Why she left the flat to her 2 nieces who she's never met before? What's interesting about this as well is that her flat is just outside Highgate Cemetery, and her long-term partner called Robert, is his name Robert? Yeah, I've forgotten already, but I think his name's Robert. He lives in the flat on the floor below her, and he works at Highgate Cemetery. In fact, he's writing like a PhD book on it. I don't really know how to explain that, but you know what I mean. So there were some interesting things about Highgate Cemetery in here and things like that. It sounded really sort of dark and creepy and gothic, and it was that, but I was a little bit disappointed with the kind of way that the story went. We got to this particular point and the characters were kind of discussing this one particular thing that they wanted to do. If you've read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I just thought, no, don't do it, that's just a stupid thing to do. And then they went and did it, and I was just like, oh, you know, that's just a bit, And yeah, it just kind of went against my expectations. I'm not really a massive reader of gothic fiction, if you could call this gothic fiction, I don't really know, or ghost stories or horror or anything like that. I don't think you can call this horror. But yeah, so I don't know, maybe it's because it's not the whole happily ever after thing, and I'm not necessarily after happily ever after, that's not all I read, but yeah, I was just disappointed with where the story went, and some of the decisions that the characters have made and the explanations for sort of things. So yeah, this was a real downer for me. I think I gave it 3 stars. Let me just check what I gave it in the end. Yeah, I gave it 3 stars, so I don't know, it was alright. I thought it was well written, but yeah, just didn't like kind of where the story went and some of the decisions that the characters made. It certainly didn't live up to her last novel that I read, The Time Traveller's Wife. I thought that was a lot better, and in fact I'm probably not going to be keeping this. Next up are all the books that I read for the Booktubeathon. So like I said earlier, I'm not going to be talking about them at all here. Yeah, you can go and check out my wrap-up that I put up a couple of days ago if you want to find out more about my thoughts. But I managed to read Pigeon English, which I gave 3.5 stars. The Girls by Emma Cline, which got 4 stars. New Boy by Tracy Chevalier, which I gave, I think, 4 stars too. The Names They Gave Us by Emery Lord, which I gave 5 stars to. And The Colour Purple by Alice Walcott, which I gave 4.5 stars to. And then the last 2 books that I've got to show you, I finished on the last day of July, which I was really pleased with. The first of those is Disgrace by J.M. Coetzee, I think that's how you pronounce that. This was one that I had on my TBR for the Booktubeathon, but only managed to read half of, so I read the other half on the last day of July. This tells the story of a man called David who at the beginning of the book gets involved with a student of his. He's a university lecturer, and he has this affair with this student of his, and you know, gets caught, you know, in the act and is dismissed from his job. So he goes and lives with, or stays with, his daughter called Lucy, who has a farm out kind of in the middle of nowhere. I think they say in here it's in East Cape. I think that's right. This is set in South Africa. Yeah, and it's about his disgrace, basically. I don't really know whether we were supposed to like the main character, David. I didn't like him at all. I thought he was kind of a bit creepy. Yeah, I didn't like the way that he conducted the affair with this girl. I thought the fact that he was doing it in the first place was really, yeah, just wrong. And then kind of what happens with his daughter, I started to feel a little bit sorry for him at times during the novel, but it didn't really take away from the fact that he makes some really stupid decisions. Yeah, but I think that's kind of what Coetzee was trying to get at, the idea of him making these terrible decisions. But also, I think Coetzee was very much writing about South Africa at the time, about the kind of the struggle between men and women, the struggle between white and black, and the kind of cultural barriers that were up at the time. I don't think this was written, I think this is sort of recent, so we're sort of maybe like, I think this was written in the 90s, I want to say. Yeah, published in 1999, so we're talking about recent history here. But yeah, I think that was his whole kind of point, to point out those kinds of things about this country and what life is like there, and the way that but also the way that your life can be turned upside down by ridiculous decisions that you make, or that some people make. So yeah, I was kind of thinking about his message behind it, and that, yeah, I think I've kind of got my head around it. I did really like it. I liked his writing. It was really succinct, and I thought it was well written. This won the Man Booker Prize in 1999 as well, so that's good. So I ended up giving this, I think, either 4 or 4.5 stars. And then the last book that I read in July was The Marsh King's Daughter by Karen Dione. This is a thriller that, again, it was sort of a carryover from my book swapathon TBR. So I'd been reading it on my Kindle, and when booktubeathon was over, I wanted to finish it off because I was sort of at about 80% when booktubeathon started. This tells the story of a woman called... I can't believe I've forgotten her name. Let me just see. Yeah, sorry about that. This tells the story of a woman called Helena, and at the beginning of the book she is married, she's got a couple of daughters, and one day she hears on the news, so this is right at the beginning of the book, so it's not a spoiler, she is driving home one day and hears on the news that this man has escaped from prison, this kind of notorious murderer or kidnapper, and it's revealed that this is her father. And it turns out that her father kidnapped her mother when her mother was something like, I want to say something like 14, and took her back with him to this cabin in the middle of the woods, and kept her his prisoner for, I think, 14 years. And while she was there, she had this little girl called Helena. So part of the book is about kind of how her father has escaped from prison, and part of the book is about how she grew up, and sort of her experience, and her view of life as a child and what was going on as a child. I found it absolutely fascinating. I really like the thriller aspect of it. Although that didn't dominate the book, like I said, it was very much between half and half. And I found it fascinating reading about how she was brought up in this environment, and what, from her point of view, what she thought was going on. And yeah, I just found it really fascinating. Really, really good book. I would highly recommend it. I got an advanced copy of this from NetGalley, but I think it's already out everywhere now. Well, certainly in the UK I think it is. So I would definitely recommend picking it up as a thriller, and I gave that 4.5 stars. So there you go guys, that was my July wrap up. I had a really great reading month, like I said at the beginning. Really proud of how much I've read. I'm off again in August, so I'm hoping to get a lot more reading done in August. So we'll see how we get on with that. I'd love to have a chat with you in the comments below. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? What are you excited now to pick up, perhaps after watching this video? Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.